Talk of climate change and increased warmth is rarely something that has positive connotations. But in the context of the relationship between the new British government and the European Union, it is something that seems to be getting approval from across the continent. In his first act as a diplomatic host, new British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed leaders from the European political community, which includes EU member states, to a security summit at Blenheim Palace, which was, in his words, a chance to reset Britain's relationship with Europe. And for the first time in what feels like a very long time, there seems to be genuine warmth from both sides of the English Channel. For years, Britain's relationship with Europe has been bubbling away as a political issue, most notably in the 2016 Brexit referendum and the 2019 general election, which was won on the promise to deliver Brexit. However, the terms of Britain's eventual departure from the EU seem to have satisfied nobody on either side of the debate, so one of the first things Starmer has to do is get Britain's relations with Europe back on track. That new relationship, however, will not include rejoining the EU or adopting the single market or freedom of movement. That is the Labour Party election manifesto promise. But there does seem to be a genuine desire on both sides for a fresh start.
What we have seen since the election, I think, is a really muscular attempt by the Labour government to prodigiously press the reset button. The British Defence Secretary John Healey just recently said European security will be this government's first foreign and defence priority. Overall, we are seeing a good reset, a good positive sense of Britain being largely welcomed back into the fold. But there are some very ticklish areas.
This new era is not just about being friendlier neighbours, however. There are serious Brexit-related issues around trade which urgently need addressing. Border control, increased paperwork, additional regulations, difficulty with exports and increased costs. All of these need looking at and resolving to get life back to something slightly easier. And then, of course, there is the issue of immigration, something that requires increased international cooperation. Having seen the huge role it played in bringing down in the last government, there will be a lot of people waiting for Starmer's government to stumble over the same issue. So what changes can we expect to see on that front?
Britain now, I think, has seen the error of its Brexit ways because it uncoupled itself from the Europe-wide migration and asylum system and also has dealt less effectively bilaterally with France. I think the only way back is to rebuild a much more realistic bilateral relationship with France and then work with France as the gatekeeper to European migration issues, if you like, to a wider European asylum and migration project that Britain necessarily has to be part of. That would have to be intergovernmental, that's state to state. Interesting that at the EPC, one of the flags flown by Starmer was not just simply tackling small boats, but the crimes associated with illegal immigration. So trying to bust people smuggling rings, etc. And I think that was a smart step because it widened a sort of bilateral problem between itself and France to a more European regional wide problem felt fairly evenly across the board, given the number of migration routes across Europe to include everybody else. It is a collective issue. Britain cannot try to solve this on its own, and the European Union can't do it without Britain.
Since the British electorate voted by a margin of just 52% to 48% to leave the tent of European unity in 2016, countries across Europe have been subjected to storms such as the pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the fuel supply crisis that no one could have seen coming, all of which have subjected countries to the toughest of tests individually and collectively. A survey by the Wall Street Journal in June, shortly before the recent general election, showed that 65% of British electors now regret leaving the EU, with just 15% considering a worthwhile move. Starmer has made it clear that rejoining is not on the agenda. But after years of wandering through numerous forests on their own, it looks like the new government is finally willing to walk a bit closer to a more well-trodden path.